Meeting together, please. We're going to start with a prayer by Commissioner Val and then the pledge by Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we ask the Lord's blessings down on the body, I'd like to remind everyone of the passing of Reese Wallace, 20-year commissioner to this board. Please remember his family in your prayers. They're receiving friends tomorrow night from 5 till 8 at Main Street Baptist Church in Rocky Top. So if you can attend, I'm sure the family would appreciate it. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for all the blessings that you give us each and every day, most of all for saving our unworthy souls. Please forgive us of our sins, times, Father, that we trespass against you. We ask you to cleanse us tonight, Father. Lord, as we enter into this meeting, we pray that you be with each heart, each mind, Father, as we conduct the business of your people. All this we ask in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen. Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have approval of agenda. Commissioner Yeager.
I have a motion.
Mr. Meade.
I'd like to make a motion to move item 7 to just after, to like 3A or 3B, right after item 3, after the approval agenda. So, one of the city commissioners is here to speak with Rick Chin, and he has to be in a meeting at 7, so I think it's appropriate to put that first.
Please speak, Robert. Mike.
To get a second. Second.
Make a motion to put item 7 to item 3A.
Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, I was wondering if maybe right after Commissioner Meade's agenda item that we could add just a brief update from Margie Presley, our building inspector. She's going to be coming to you next month with an action item, but she wanted to just make you aware this month, get this in your hands so that you can look at it for 30 days, if you'd be willing to add that.
Okay, do we have a motion on that? We'll vote on both of them at the same time. We have a motion and a second. We're going to vote on A and B addition to the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll start with Main Street Apartment Pilot.
Hang on just a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One other item to add.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's correct. We need to add, and we'll do this under new businesses, for the authority for the chairman to sign legal documents. Can somebody make a motion to do that?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's been added as well under new business. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a quick question. So, Jay, did the chairman not have the authority prior? Or?
I don't believe the chairman has the authority without moving to sign something like that. Let me tell you what the document is. You're not voting for the chairman to sign all legal documents, nothing like that. There's a request of Mr. Capiello, in fact, the lender that's selling the Taco Bell to another company. Taco Bell's on our old General Sessions too. They sent an affidavit with the chairman's name on it to sign that Anderson County has no legal interest in this. We don't. We only had a lease there. The lease was expired. We were on a month-to-month tenancy at the time. So we're not about to claim any financial or legal interest in that property that I can even think of. But what it is they think that's a cloud on the title, and they want to clear that cloud on the title for this company that's getting a loan from California to purchase this property. That's the way I understand it, and I've talked with Mr. Norman, and that's really what the affidavit says.
Okay, so the action we just took, Mr. Chairman, is that for me to sign that document?
Yes, that particular document. But I would encourage you to wait until County Commission approves that motion.
Okay.
It's just a recommendation
Yeah,
from this
that's
committee.
what my question was. And then, Mr. Chairman, I guess my normal question would be, could the mayor sign off on that document?
I'm sure the mayor could, but I would be standing here asking you for the same authority. She doesn't have any explicit power to do that, and I'm sure Mayor Frank would come up here and ask for your permission to sign it. She's always very courteous with all issues like that. So I would think she'd be standing right up here asking your permission too. Similar to a resolution we would do. We don't like to do things on a unilateral basis that affects all the citizens and all the entire county. We'll leave that up to you. But
Thank you.
that's what it's about. Anybody's want to take a look at it, we'll get you a copy here. We've got the original tonight.
You have a copy?
He showed it to me before the meeting started.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Rick?
Good evening, Commissioners. I represent Main Street Capital Partners. My name's Daniel Smith, 315 Train Drive. The investor group that I represent is intending to develop about 217 apartment units on the AMSI site in Oak Ridge. We've been working on this project for over a year now. Part of this project, we have a pilot. We submitted a pilot application with Oak Ridge. Last month, mid-February, that was approved. But our site plan, it has 7 apartment buildings, 217 units, but we have an acre plus or minus that is intended to be a mixed-use, potentially retail development. That we don't know. We don't have any plans for it, but it's just segmented off as a potential future apartment building or future mixed-use retail component to the project. Recent law change has resulted in, I think it was earlier this year, has required that any retail component to a pilot has to go to the county in the district that the pilot is being requested in. And so after that happened, we realized that we needed to come before you all and get approval for the pilot as it stands. And so that's why we're here today asking for your support for the project, and wanted to just make ourselves open to any questions that you all might have. This is Class A high-end apartments that we're planning to construct. And we think that the way that we've laid out this property, we think that a retail component would be a good benefit. It's next to the mall. There's a walkable kind of downtown feel we're trying to create. And I think that having some sort of mixed-use component to it will make the whole project a better project overall. And so kind of we're set in a situation where if Anderson County declined to permit us to have a retail component, we would kind of have to relook at things and maybe plan for an apartment building on that site. But we think kind of the best win-win scenario is to put a retail component there, and it will help drive retail revenue and sales tax revenue to Anderson County during the pilot term. Currently, the whole site is generating zero tax dollars. Under our pilot that we've negotiated with Oak Ridge and worked out with Oak Ridge, we will pay $100,000 of tax revenue in 2 years, and continue that throughout the pilot term. And then towards the end of the pilot term, the last 5 years, it's a 20-year pilot, we'll start accelerating that tax payment up to full value by the end of the tax term. It's kind of a last-minute thing, and we just wanted to make ourselves available for any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner
Motion
Meade?
to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion, we'll have a second. All right, discussion, Commissioner Meade.
Yeah, there was an email that was forwarded to us with the minutes. Now, on page 7 of 17, there's a section where it seems to be quoting Tennessee code. And I want to make sure I understand what this really says. Now, I'm going to read this. It's fairly short. It just says it's effective 1 October 2018, okay? And it says, A1, the corporation is hereby declared to be performing a public function on behalf of the municipality with respect to which the corporation is organized and to be a public instrumentality of such municipality. Accordingly, the corporation and all properties at any time owned by it and the income and revenues from the properties and all bonds issued by it and the income from the bonds shall be exempt from all taxation in the state of Tennessee. Is that going to apply to this? Goes on to say, also for the purpose of Securities Act of 1980, compiled in Title 48, Chapter 1, Part 1, bonds issued by the corporation shall be deemed to be securities issued by a public instrumentality or a political subdivision of the state of Tennessee.
What that is, I believe they're talking about IDB. See if they have the definition sections up front. I don't think they do, but the definition sections will show corporation as the IDB. And that is true. The IDB holds ownership. That's the way it's been in the state of Tennessee for years. You're not talking about the developer.
Well, that's what I can't tell from the way this is.
Right.
The way this was sent to us. I can't
I'll
tell.
go ahead and forward it.
I couldn't tell what that applies to.
Yes, sir.
If it applied to the developer, I would have a problem with it.
Yeah, I understand you would. I will send you that sheet up.
If this only applies to the
Section
IDP
101.
specifically, then I don't have any problem with it.
Commissioner, the way that a typical pilot works, and I think that's exactly correct. That
Yeah, payment in lieu of taxes for those that didn't know what a pilot.
So we agreed to a lease with IDB. We actually convey the property to the IDB. So we would purchase the property and then convey it in a quitclaim deed to the IDB. They would hold the property for the pilot term and then sell it back to us for a nominal fee at the end of the term. And that's a way the tax incentives in Tennessee have been set up over the last 50 to 60 years, however long IDB's been the statutes have been around. And so the IDB itself is a non-taxable entity and that's kind of what allows this tax incentive program to work. Historically, going back to the beginning of the IDB, any IDB could recommend a tax incentive in a municipality-controlled area like, say, the city of Knoxville or Oak Ridge, and it would never go to the county commission to get approval. But over the last 10 or so years, there's been enough, dissatisfaction with that scheme that they have enacted new state legislation that says that if there's a retail component, then it's got to go before the county commission. That's how we got to here. So if we had...
This just opens, what we're doing tonight would have just opened the way for retail to be added to the...
Yes, sir. So if this was a year ago, we wouldn't be here, but because of the new legislation, we're here asking for this tax incentive from the county.
Okay, that resolves my issue, because I was taking us evidently out of context, and I thought this applied to the contractor, not to the IDB, and so that's why I was confused.
You're right, but I need to give you some additional information that will help you understand how this all works. There's history to this, and the law is very complicated, so let me shoot you an email, okay? But you're right, on the issue tonight, you're exactly right, you're right.
Any other discussion?
Thank you.
Commissioner Scott.
Thank you. You said that there'd be $100,000 in property taxes. Are you meaning city and county, or city or county?
Yes, ma'am. That lease payment would go to the IDB, and they would be splitting that payment between the two municipalities, or between the city and the county. However, it's important to kind of also understand that this pilot is within this TIF district. So the money that's being generated will actually go to pay down the TIF loan sooner. And so it resides within this whole mall TIF district that was established three or 4 years ago. And so if we didn't do this, there would be the one benefit, I think, of retail, because the cost of a retail building in terms of the improvements roughly the same as an apartment building. But the tax revenue, I think the retail sales tax revenue, I think, would go to the city sooner. And that would be a pro, I guess, for the county to get proceeds that if we were stuck just doing residential, you wouldn't get that. Now, I don't know how much that is, and I think, but it is a benefit, I think, to the retail component in this instance.
Yeah, I was just looking for clarification. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? I've got one. And I'm sure you've probably done a study, and you're going to have how many apartments? 217? Is that correct?
217, yes, sir.
217. All right. Have you done a study as to how much that would actually bring into the community as projected retail sales? They're not going to be shopping at for home improvement, basically, but do you have any formula that we could anticipate as far as sales tax revenue?
We have not done any study that would predict if there's 217 units, there might be 300 residents shopping at the mall, generating tax revenue, sales tax revenue. We don't have a number on that. We could look into it, but I don't think all of our market studies have been kind of feasibility studies for the apartment complexes and not necessarily looking at from the standpoint of how much sales tax they would be spending at Kroger and Oak Ridge versus, if those residents were in Hardin Valley and they're staying there. So I don't know that answer, but certainly I think that part of the reason why we got so much support for this is because of that very reason. There hasn't been new housing products in Oak Ridge, and we felt like, and the city felt like, this project would be a real stimulus for the overall mall development and to keep it going and to keep people shopping in Oak Ridge. And so we think it's something, but I don't know.
And I'm just trying to bring out
honest.
some other points, for the public. Now, what are you looking like the occupancy be for these apartments? Because the question I'm trying to get to is how many children do we anticipate that will be entering into the Oak Ridge school system?
These apartments are actually they're sort of heavy one bedrooms because we think there's a lot of people working at the lab and that they'd be coming in and would have a year or so rental but we do anticipate families moving there too and being in a great school district. I think there's we predict 300 or so residents, 217 units, there's 60% are one bedroom. I suspect that there would not be a whole lot of children living in the one bedroom units, but that still leaves 80 or so potential children. But I'd have to look at the demographics of the market study. We have done a market study, and they have information about the capture of how many residents would live in the apartment complex. I'm not sure they went down to that level, though.
Now, you're mentioning that more than likely you'll have some residents that's new maybe to the plants. Are you going to be able to, and this is an issue in the county as well as Oak Ridge, about promoting people to actually come in and live in Oak Ridge? Do you have any?
Well, I think one of the remarkable things about the need for this project is that I think there's 8,000 new employees for DOE that DOE's bringing in over the next couple of years, including all the construction projects that are going on.
For the UPF project?
Mm-hmm. And so it's there was quite a bit of demand for new units. I think our demand in this case was something near I think it was 375 apartment units is demanded in Oak Ridge because of all the new jobs.
So in essence, what you could see is you could see some of these people that's coming in from new job come in for a year and then look for more
permanent situation.
Permanent housing. Mm-hmm.
And of the 8, there was a capture rate of I think 20%. They predicted that 20% of the 8,000 or so odd that are moving in would have a demand for apartments. But there's also a lot of a lot of people that work at the labs and work at the other businesses in Oak Ridge. They live in Knox County, and so the hope is that some of those people would forego the drive to Hardin Valley or elsewhere and stay.
I hope so.
So just because of the convenience of it and where it's located.
Something I remember hearing is that I guess, I'm not sure competition's the right word, but similar is Bristol Park and Centennial Village. They're high, like 97% occupied. So this is, I think, a demand is definitely there for another high-end apartment complex.
Commissioner Creasy.
Yeah, and I agree, the demand is high for property in Oak Ridge. The houses are selling just as fast as the signs go up. But I was wanting to ask another question. You gave a figure of what in lieu of taxes would be paid, and I didn't get that figure.
What the tax would be, if not for
What you would be paying over the period of the note.
$100,000.
$100,000 over the whole period.
So the way this lease is structured is that there would be for 15 years it'd be $100,000.
15 years.
And then in years 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, that would step up by roughly $70,000 a year. So it'd go to 170 and then go to 250 and so on, up to where it got to the final figure.
So there will be, in lieu of taxes, coming both to the county and the city.
Yes, that tax revenue will be paying down
the note
that the TIF loan has.
Is there
Hopefully it will pay it down quicker.
Is there any payments at all to come to the county or the city other than the pay down of the note?
It's because it's in the TIF district, and it was very difficult to work that out. We were somewhat at the mercy of Realty Link in this affair as well, because they carved this AMZ site as potentially as feeding into the tax dollars of that TIF. All tax revenue, no matter what happens on that site, goes to pay that TIF. And it's part of the collateral that the bankers that lended the TIF loan have. But the sooner that note is paid down, the better.
That's all paid to the IDB.
Yes. Well, yes.
Very good. We'll be asked these questions.
Yes.
So I'm just wanting to get my notes ready.
So in short, it'll be paid to the IDB in the form of lease payments, and then IDB will turn around and apply those to the payment of the TIF loan.
Right.
But to the extent that the TIF, the mall development performs well, any excess tax revenue does go to the county and the city.
We're anticipating an increase in the sales tax from the residents that live there.
That's right. That's the important thing with the retail too, is there will be some retail revenue. If we have a retail site, there will be retail revenue associated with this that would go to the county and the city, and there would be retail sales revenue being spent at the mall and other places just from the development.
And we do need to keep those new employees coming here to live in Anderson County. Yeah, that's a big plus for us.
Commissioner Meade.
I apologize for coming again, but I had something I think is important. Now, the TIF loan here has already been bonded, is that correct? Such that any risk on the loan is not on the IDP or on the county or city. The risk is still on the contractor. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Commissioner Wandell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, was it?
Yes, sir.
When would this project start?
Early fall, late summer, but more likely early fall.
And then estimated completion?
2-year construction period.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about the true-up process, how that's going to work.
In terms of,
I mean, I guess in 2021, you'll be able to meet again and kind of, the way I interpret it, kind of true up everything and look at your cost and what, I guess I'm trying to understand that.
so there's not, in this pilot lease, there's not really a true-up period. When the pilot term ends, we would purchase the property, and then the assessed value, it would be taxed like any other property. In this case, we're anticipating the tax to be roughly $375,000 or so. But ultimately, it's the tax assessor's office would determine what the value that is and would apply the tax rates to it at the full tax rate. Now, I think the TIF is 20 years too? So at that period of time, go ahead.
Rick Chin, City Council in Oak Ridge. The TIF will be paid off when the TIF is paid off. And there's a certain amount of money that the developer has drawn down on the TIF. And the more money that goes into it through projects like this and others in the TIF district, the faster it gets paid off. So I think the maximum it can be is about 20 years. It could be shorter than that.
So assuming at the end of 20 years that's paid off, the tax rate will be what the tax rate is assessed to be, and it will be there. We would own the property in fee simple, and then of course we wouldn't be subject to the same preferences that the IDB has. So we can be taxed.
Yeah, I guess I was looking at 1A there. The TIF loan funds originally allocated for the development of apartments will not be advanced by the lenders to the developer, but could be advanced directly into the collateral reserve account until the final reconciliation requirements true up are determined on or before February 28th, 2021, as necessitated by the original TIF loan agreements.
I think that language is coming from the TIF loan itself, that doesn't pertain to our pilot request. That information must have been sent because simply this is in the TIF zone, and I think they wanted to provide that documentation, but that's not part of the pilot resolutions, that language. It really, that language is in reference to the TIF.
So what would be the cost? And again, this is funds that will be coming in based on taxes produced, not us writing you a check. You're using those future funds to do this TIF. Am I understanding we'd be out roughly $100,000 a year? Is that what you're saying from the county's perspective?
No, the way the pilot works is a little different. What it does is it sets instead of, if we had done this development without a pilot, we would come in this case, we would develop this building. It would get assessed at a value that would probably be somewhere around $350,000 of tax revenue. That tax revenue would go to pay down the TIF. The reason why we can't do that is because the operating costs, there's a reason why multifamily tends to go into county-only zones, particularly in areas where the rental revenue can't support a higher tax payment, because that's a huge operating cost on our project, so it would not financially work. So we have to have a pilot to do multifamily, and every project in Oak Ridge for multifamily has required a pilot, at least in the last 20 years. And the same goes for the city of Knoxville. Most apartment complexes in downtown Knoxville require a pilot for the same double tax reason. And that's the reason why Hardin Valley is just overloaded with apartments, and why they're stealing a lot of the residences there is because it's a single tax district. So the operating costs for the apartments there are much lower. So I guess to answer your question, the benefit's actually a little bit more than that. It's probably closer to 200,000, not 100, 250 even.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Chairman.
Sir.
Commissioner Denberg.
Would you explain what the pilot is for those who may not know?
So the pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes, and so what happens is when you a developer or any property owner would spend $20 million building a structure, you're increasing the value of the tax revenue driven from that structure. And so what the pilot does to help incentivize large investments like that is you would agree to a lease rate for the taxes, and that is the payment that is in lieu of taxes. So we would make so instead of paying taxes of $200,000, we would agree to pay $100,000, and that increment helps our operating costs and incentivizes the large projects. So the payment in lieu of taxes is rather than paying taxes, we agree, there's a set rate that's paid. And the IDB helps, the structure of the IDB helps that facilitate that tax incentive because IDB is a non-taxed entity, and so they can go into a ground lease arrangement with the property owner to facilitate that structure.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
One more short. This is a $28 million project, is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Commissioner McCain.
I've been asked, like some of the others, for what is a pilot. And like you said, it's payment in lieu of taxes. We get that from TVA because they're non-taxable, but they pay us in lieu of taxes. And it helps our schools and the county. We get that from DOE because they're not taxable. You know, all the federal land that's in Oak Ridge and part of it in Roane County, they pay in lieu of taxes. And basically this is city properties that we're getting nothing on right now, and it's a payment in lieu of taxes because it's owned by the city. So
I think it's important to point out, too, that it's going to be actually occupying the space of the old AMSI site as well, which is not on the tax roll currently.
right.
And if I may, kind of from a high-level point of view, too, the way that it's currently set up, you know, we have this pilot, and we can go develop these 217 units, and we're planning to have a retail component, and that's really why we're here. The question, I think, for Anderson County that's really before Anderson County's commissioners is, do you want more? I mean, would we have to build more apartment units, or could we supplement it with retail? And ultimately, you know, from our perspective, we're a little bit risk adverse. We don't want to have to invest more into apartment building, have more units, and have more risk there. We'd like to spread our risk a little bit. Roughly the same amount of dollars would be spent. We would, instead of doing a retail building that costs $3.5 million, we'd be putting a apartment building that costs $2.5 million. So from a tax revenue, what we're asking you to agree to is, you know, allow us to build a more expensive structure that will generate more tax revenue in the future, and a retail component, a small part of our project that would drive some sales revenue as well. So really, it's kind of a situation where we'd like to have some retail. We think it's the best thing for that project. We're a little bit anxious about putting 250 apartment units. We think 217 is a little bit more manageable of a number in a municipality like Oak Ridge. And so that's why we're here in a nutshell. If we didn't get your approval, we'd have to go back and kind of and probably plan to see how the apartments go over the next couple of years, and then if it worked out well, we would maybe build another apartment building at that site. So we think it's a viable retail site. We think it's a viable apartment site, but I think our ask, and we think it's the best situation, is to have a little small retail component to it.
When you say retail component, what are you talking about? Are you talking about like a restaurant or dry goods or?
Yes, sir. It's zoned in a like it's PB zoning, which is a kind of a general business district zoning. Allows everything from restaurants to general retail, cell phone store, bank. Pretty much fairly open-ended in terms of what we would do there. I think that it could be a great medical office site. It's a little bit off of the Oak Ridge or Illinois Avenue, but it's next to the mall. There's other retail around it, so we think that it could be a range of uses from medical office to restaurant to coffee shops and just anything kind of like that. Hopefully something that would be used that the residents could see as an amenity that they could walk to and use.
Commissioner Edinburgh?
One last question. How much square footage are you looking for as far as the retail is concerned? And will it be adjacent to the apartments and/or incorporated within the structures?
The retail portion would be, so the site's 11 acres. There's about 1.2 or 1.3 acres that we would peg for the retail section of it. It would be there's 2 apartment buildings up on 2 Lane, and it would kind of be next to those apartment buildings, kind of adjacent to the driveway into Tulane that exists now. There's been other plans for grocers and that sort of thing on that southern end, so it would be down towards that southern end. But I hope I answered your question. But it potentially could be a 2-story structure with some residential on top and retail on the bottom, or it could be a freestanding retail structure. We don't know yet, but we would not anticipate more than 8,000 probably in retail. But close to 8,000 would be about how it would top off.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions, comments? What we'll be voting on is resolution number 19-03-735. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you moving the meeting up. Thank you.
3B. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce Margie Presley. Anderson County does have requirements to adopt codes, and I'm going to let Margie explain that, what she's been working on, how many months she's been working on this.
Since I started a year.
And I'm going to let her dive into it. We don't want you to have to vote on this tonight, but we did want to bring it ahead of time to give you 30 days to review and be able to ask her for more information, explain things, even possibly be prepared to make changes. So I'm going to turn it over to Margie.
The state has just adopted, or is in the process, the final date of adoption for their new codes, which will be the 2018 codes, is May 2nd. So we have to adopt something because we are on the 2009 codes. We need to adopt, we've got some changes or amendments to the code that we'd like to amend the code. I'd like you to review them. I've made up a sheet for each one of you. It gives each one what I'm replacing or changing, and then at the back it gives the section of the code that tells, what the code originally stated and what I'm amending it to. But we really need to get on with this. The state, like I said, could fine us if we don't have it adopted by the end of May, basically. So we want to get ahead of this. Do you have any questions?
Commissioner McCamey?
Has the Planning Commission had any input into this? Are they aware of it, or?
I don't know.
No.
Not that I know of.
I think this is the first step, the way I
Yeah, this is the
understand it.
first step.
So will you take it to the planning commission and then them give us a recommendation to us? Okay, that's great.
But we want to give you a heads up.
Right.
And
I
one
understand.
question that I know that every contractor out there that's here in this meeting now is wanting to know how contractor-friendly it is, or if it's more stringent.
It's slightly more stringent, but that's why we're amending some of the stuff. One of the main components is the insulation and fenestration. Basically, the code now says that all the walls have to be R19, which means all your 2x4 walls would have to be a 2x6 walls. But the state says we can amend that, so we're going to stick with what we've got.
Will this be posted on the website for anybody to look at?
It'll be posted in the paper, and we can post it on the website if you'd like.
I personally think it'd be a good idea for the contractors to look at, because that's who's going to be, you know.
Yeah, I've talked with all the contractors while I've
Okay.
been out telling them what I've got and everything, so, but,
First of all, I want to tell you what a phenomenal building inspector this lady is. That was a fantastic hire. She's very, very good.
Mr. Chairman, can we have that repeated again?
I'll say it all day long. But anyway, you remember when we've done this before, we adopt codes, we go ahead and get 3 copies, and one goes in Jeff Cole's office, and citizens can come by and check it out and take a look at it. And one goes back, and these are mandatory copies, so it's pretty thick, but it's always available for our citizens to come by and check out a copy. The code's also online. You don't have to come here, and that's where I do a lot of my research, is just looking at the online versions. But remember, what she's going to ask you to do is maybe cut back on some of these areas. We'll do that by resolution, but not everything you read will go into effect. She'll do her edits, and then I'll get with her and we'll put it in resolution form. But
plus
if
the
anybody,
contractors will have
Yeah.
say in it too.
but if anybody wants to see it, we'll go ahead and get those books. It's online, and be glad to answer questions. Thank you.
Mr. Creasy?
So we need a motion to send it to the planning commission?
No, this is
no.
just for information.
No, this is just
bringing
a
it for
FYI.
information.
Oh, letting us know that you're working on it. Okay.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming.
Any other questions?
Please.
Commissioner Meade?
Okay, we're talking about the International Building Code?
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? Okay, and the one that we're looking at adopting with some revisions is the 2017?
No, the 2018.
2000, oh, the current one, the 2018. I know you can be a certain number of years behind or something.
7 years.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We're on the 2009, 2009, so.
Thank you.
Are we facing any kind of repercussion or anything for being on the 2009 building
No.
codes, for being so far behind? Okay.
Because right now, the state's on the 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, they're on 2012.
okay.
So we're in compliance right now, but as soon as they adopt it, we're not going to be in compliance.
Right.
So. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. Like right now, we've had a big influx of people that's going to build. Okay, we're looking at maybe 400 homes now. How will this new plan affect them, the ones that's already got plans or figured a cost and all that? Or will it?
As far as that, when it goes into effect, any permit after it goes into effect.
After it goes in.
After it goes into effect. Anything prior to the adoption of this will be on the 2009.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Thank you.
Not a problem. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're back on track. John K. Alley, property assessor.
Chairman, Operations Committee, nice to be in front of you again. I'd scheduled to be at the last operations meeting because of the TVA meeting in Oak Ridge. I got pushed to the full commission, and then they've recommended I refer back to operations. The reason I'm here is basically the same reason I was here about a year and a half ago, was to request to have all my employees under one roof in one office, and while establishing a boardroom for my equalization board hearings, giving me more space, and also to create a break room for my employees that have not had one for 12 years, or 6 years since 2012, since I took office. I'm requesting the boardroom that's currently it's held by the IT department. There, it looks like they might be getting ready to vacate because they've expanded so much. I currently hold my equalization board meetings in the trustee's office. I use a table that's, I guess, in a part of the building that was, granted to them some time back. I know that a break room was proposed for the 4-H building, but I don't think that's working too well because of their training. And 2 or 3 times I've been down there, it's been locked. And this room is just right outside my back door. And actually, it's where we used to hold our equalization board meetings till I think the prior assessor relinquished that room for other purposes. I mean, this is, I guess, the same thing that most of you heard when I was at the commission meeting. My ultimate goal in the future is to house all my employees under one roof. Right now, if I need a map or someone comes to my office, we have to walk across, go through the trustee's office, back into the back corner. If there's other people in there, then it's an issue, as well as my board meetings. We've got corporations coming in to appeal their tax values, and people are in and out of the office because it's kind of open. I'd just like it, be a professional boardroom if I could have it, and then, and oftentimes it could be used by other people. My break room is for the same 10 reasons that, the HR put out, that, it's you get more productive workers. You need to be away from your workstation. It's not professional to be sitting there eating in front of taxpayers when they come up to the window. All those same reasons. And if I were to get that and some more space, what I would do is would come to this committee, and I'd like to see the committee that's when it's established just stay that meets on a regular basis as rooms come open. I would, if I were able to get my mapper under one roof, then what extra space I have, I'm not going to allocate it out to somebody. I'm going to come to the committee and say, all right, I've got my old mapper's room. It's available if anybody needs it. And then that way the same committee's always over it. Right now it's just whoever gets what goes. But anyway, I appreciate your consideration for that. I know that you had talked about forming a committee and, meeting and looking over the courthouse, and I've seen 2 or 3 commissioners come through, but I don't know that it's been established yet. Any questions for me?
How many square feet would be an ideal number to have your housing of your employees? Because I know the boardroom doesn't have to be in that group.
I'd say right now that there's 150, probably 400 right now that's from my mapper and for the storage that we've got right now, that if I were to be able to get him in another room, and it borders us if other people were to move out. I know that people have requested to even be out of the courthouse. Depends on what space comes available, but whatever a boardroom would be, 200, probably 600 square feet total.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And that would be break room, storage, and maybe 600 to 800, without just off the top of my head.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. Is the trustee looking at doing something with the space where you're holding the hearings right now? Is she planning on doing something with that pretty soon? Or?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for her, but yes, she had talked to me about, she's got employees across the courthouse that are in different areas too, and I believe she's talking about bringing them in. That's the only place for them. It's the only space she has left is where I'm currently meeting. Okay. And we used to meet in the map room, but there's probably just room for, well, Catherine was on the board, there's probably room for 6 or 7 comfortable. But, if the taxpayer brings 2 representatives from the taxpayer and they bring 2 attorneys, 5 board members, and Billy Brown, which holds the meetings, and myself, you're looking at 11 or 12 people in a room set up for 7.
How often do you hold the equalization?
Every year from first week of June till reappraisal year, usually sometimes last 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
Last year we just met 3 days, but
okay.
It depends on how the reappraisal goes.
Right.
How many appeals we have.
Right.
Commissioner McCain.
Mr. Chairman, I went with Director Young and looked at the space that the Election Commission is now utilizing downstairs on the first floor. It would be ideal for him because it adjoins his server room that's got everything right there. It's all right together. Where he's at adjoins the property assessor. So I think it's a no-brainer that we let them two just switch. The only problem is the election commission are using those 3 offices for storage. And then the big room for voting machine storage. There's 2 or 3 offices inside the zoning department that's really not being utilized that could be used for storage. Also, we have CASA, which is a nonprofit that's occupying quite a bit of space in the courthouse. And I've always been a big supporter of CASA. I think they do an excellent job, but I think they need to be with juvenile court because that's basically what they do is work with juvenile court. And we need to look at maybe juvenile court allowing some space over there. They've got the whole first floor of the bank building, and let CASA move over there because they've got about 3 or 4 offices there that they're utilizing, and they are a nonprofit. And you know, there's always been some question about letting nonprofits in the courthouse and utilize our space. It just blows my mind that we used to have the entire school department, sheriff's department, jail, Department of Human Services, and all in this courthouse at one time. And now all of those have moved out and taken up whole first floors of other buildings, and we're still strapped for space. But I think it's a no-brainer for the IT department and property assessor to switch out and utilize that space.
Commissioner Scott.
I'd like to make a suggestion. We've had several department heads come to us and ask for more room or to get their old rooms back. We have an IT department. We have space downstairs. We have the attorney's client rooms that the judge came in and talked about. It would be nice to make everybody happy just that fast, but I think it would be best for us to get a committee of some sort together. Look at the blueprints, go to each of the departments, and rather than say, well, you know what, you've got enough room back here, we'll give you a break room, and oh, you want a break room too? Well, let's work on that. And moving people around just to make things kind of work for the moment. I think it would be best that we get a committee, look at the blueprints and/or look at the different offices in both the Jolly Building and here, and the Daniel Arthur Building as well. And then come up with something, speak to the department heads and find out how scattered people are and you know, try to bring them in. But right now, we've got approximately 5 different break rooms according to the blueprints, the old blueprints. I'm sure the mayor would like a break room, the commissioners would like a break room, HR would like a break room. Where I work in one building, we have 1 break room. And when you go to take a break, when you go to take your lunch, you use the kitchen, which has tables, chairs, and filtered water, et cetera. It just seems kind of nonsensical right now, just to make one person happy or one department happy to stop and work on this when we've got so many different issues at hand.
In response to Commissioner Scott, it's been on my mind ever since our last meeting is to actually form a subcommittee, maybe with 2 commissioners from operations and 2 commissioners from budget that actually, you know, that could be retired or have the time to be here during the day, not so much as the ones that, you know, that work full-time job, to go by and work with the mayor as well. You know, it would be like a 5-person committee that goes by and just kind of assesses it, and then, you know, they come back and they say, this is the way it needs to be, and make a recommendation to this committee. But that's kind of the way that I agree with you, Commissioner Scott.
And I'd like to request that, give the department heads access to this as well. Not necessarily saying, okay, you're on this committee, but let them do have their word, or piece in there. We've just got a lot of space, and it's a matter of making everyone happy and splitting it up properly so that we don't end up doing this 2 years from now saying, well, I grew a little bit in my area and you're wanting to leave the building, so I'll just swap rooms. So, thank you.
Mr. Yeager?
Thank you. Commissioner McCamey, did you go through the whole building or just different parts? Because there are doors in this building that I have no idea what's behind or if it's even being used. Do you have any idea? Did you?
We looked at everything that we could possibly look at. Brian knows the courthouse as well as anybody because he's been in every office. And we looked at that area that the Election Commission has now, a total of 3 offices, and then the room that's almost as big as this room where they have the voting machines. And I've always said they need to be in storage somewhere, not taking up that much space. We looked at the CASA, which is the nonprofit over, and then the area inside the zoning office.
Okay.
That's about the only place that we look because that's the only place that really there was any, you get on somebody else's turf and they get out of here. you can't have my space, But that was about the only 3 areas that we looked at. And of course, where Brian's at, he's got 2 employees and himself, and they're all in one little office, and it adjoins the property assessor's office.
Oh.
Brian's does, and the Election Commission offices adjoin his server room, which is, right there. That's why I said it's really just a no-brainer for those 2 to be able to trade out. But the only problem then is getting the Election Commission on board to say, okay, we'll give up that space, find us something else, and that's why I brought up maybe the CASA, because right now they're on the first floor. The Election Commission's on the 2nd floor, and they're utilizing a lot of space on the first floor, so theirs wouldn't have to be next to them,
Yeah. I don't know who has keys to every door in this place.
Well, that's a problem. I'm sure we've got a master key at some point if we could get Roger to have open for us. If indeed we form a committee, we could just say we need these doors open. We need to be able to see, But
I'm sure there are plenty of surprises behind some of these doors.
Christmas trees.
Yeah. Jay?
Just don't forget, we entered into a lease with Casa Board. What was that? A little over a year ago, I guess the fall of 2017. So we still do have that, but it's well thought out, Robert.
That lease can be
Termination, remember, we put one in there.
right. We can give them notice.
Yes, sir.
But I still think they perform a great service. But it's basically juvenile court, and juvenile court is now across the street, so they would have to come back over here and back and forth. And I just feel like there's some room somewhere besides the courtroom. I've never been past the courtroom itself. I don't know what kind of offices they have there, but I know we've got the circuit court clerk has got the juvenile court clerk over there, But other than that, I don't know what's in behind some of those other walls over there.
Commissioner Creasy?
He just answered both the law director and Commissioner McCamey also answered my questions. I was going to ask about, I think it's a great idea, moving those nonprofits that are associated with juvenile court over there, if there's room.
If there's room, I don't know that.
And I was wanting to ask you if you had been over there to see if there's any space.
I just know they occupy quite a bit on the first floor.
Right. And the other question I had was about the lease, so that was all answered. Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Scott.
but it's like you're saying though, Robert. I mean, you've got some offices here in this building where you can do cartwheels and never hit the walls. And then you've got other areas where there's people cramped in there and they've got OSHA issues. That's why I was saying it's best to really look at everything, nothing in particular, but everything in general. No one likes change, you know.
Right.
But if it means, you know, putting up a wall somewhere that a department goes, oh no, but you're encroaching on our break space, so be it. It's unfortunate, but there's room.
Commissioner Dittenberg.
Well, I believe that's what we discussed at the commission meeting, that the fact that it needs to be taken into consideration, just a complete overview of space needs for several different departments. And I certainly think that it's time, and I would suggest to move forward with a committee.
Commissioner Jameson.
This is just, since we're just bird walking, I'm pretty good at this. Before I was elected to be on this last year, I was on the election commission for 16 years. And every 3 years, they came after our space. They offered us all kinds of bribes and things. No, I'm just kidding about the bribes. But they said, the commission always said, yeah, we'll be willing to move out of the courthouse or move somewhere else in the courthouse as long as you find us a reasonably decent place. And they had us running all over the county looking at property to buy, to sell, to build. Well, nothing happened. 3 years later, we want your space. And I don't think we can put everybody in this building and let everybody have this room and a break room. Now, if you want to start farming out departments or, and have them across the street or something like that, or build an adjacent, say, Courthouse A and Courthouse B, you're not going to get all the things that we want in this building right here. That's impossible. And so I think we need to, like what these, it's a good idea to look, see what space we got. But now, there's some places that are sacred. They're going to fight you over every square foot.
Too bad.
Yeah. Well, they have some clout. They're voters too. You know. And plus, they can put you in jail. You're not going to tell the judge, we're going to have 200 square feet of your property when he's wanting 400 feet more himself. So we're going to have to either build something or maybe have one nice big break room on one floor that all departments can use it. Nobody's going to get everything they want. You built a new house. I built a new house one time, and I hadn't lived there 2 weeks. Now you had made some mistakes. I ended up with about 80% of what I really wanted, but that was my mistake. But we're not going to be able to solve this at this meeting, and we're not going to be able to solve it in this building. That's impossible. Thank you.
Mayor? Johnny's hiding you.
I volunteered to move somewhere close to the beach. Skype in. You can have my office.
Do you,
Yes, sir.
Do you have any suggestions, or what do you think about a subcommittee? And
I think that idea is excellent. Commissioner Scott's idea there is a great idea. I did reach out to the folks at ESG to get a status update on where we are with their assessment. And again, we also have a property that we are invested in now in the city of Oak Ridge. It does need some work. I think, we need a new roof. If we're going to put a new roof on it, we need to do an assessment, and we need to put some money into that building and put it to use for government operations. And then secondarily, if we have space, then use it for nonprofits and others, or put it on the market for fair market, lease values. But those spaces, we're paying all of these leases. I don't know of one, I only know of one where we're actually getting, costs covered. All the others, we're actually losing money, we're paying upkeep, we're paying the utilities, and so I think there is space available. Yes, there might be an investment, but maybe we can offset that investment by not taking a loss on the other operations. So I like your committee idea. I think it'll work.
We would need a motion for a subcommittee.
So moved.
I guess we need to.
I make a second. I think that's on just having a subcommittee take a look at this.
And then now we've got a motion and a second, we can have discussion like, whether it is 2 commissioners from each and then include the mayor. But I think we need to really let this subcommittee have some teeth that says whatever they says, we're going to stand behind them.
I understand what Commissioner Jameson says, but, these spaces are not the property of who occupies it. It's all commission. We allocate it. So, we are going to make some people mad, but it probably has to be done. Probably should have been done years ago. But I think this committee, it's time for it. The makeup, I think, makes sense of 2 from here and 2 from budget possibly. But it needs to happen. So I'm certainly in favor of this. And along with Commissioner McCamey, I volunteer to be from the operations side of it. From the budget side?
Sure. Budget.
Okay. Mayor?
It's something that's going to need to be worked on rather quick.
This would be during your working hours, though.
I'll take some PTO.
Okay, all right. What do you think, Mayor? You think the makeup is reasonable with that group? Okay.
Would the maker of the motion include those 4?
Yes.
Okay.
Did somebody mention about the mayor being the mayor?
Yeah.
A 5-member committee?
She's actually, that's what it was, the mayor and 2 from budget and 2 from.
That way you can get us keys from Robert.
Yeah, she has access to keys.
Would you include those in your motion?
Yes.
And second?
Sure, a second.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Does everybody understand the motion? Any discussion? All in favor, say it.
Aye.
For this committee to meet, will we have to post it and wait 10 days? Or can we set, dates out at this time?
To be honest with you, I think that's kind of what the mayor could work on because she's basically got the keys to the building.
Okay.
To be exact.
Okay.
More than 1 commissioner.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Creasy.
Clarify.
Go ahead.
No, I was just clarifying.
Well, I've been through this before, and it'll require field trips, day meetings where you go visit the offices, and did this with the election commission. I sort of headed that up one time, and it was a lot of work, and trying to find a spot outside of the courthouse because the election commission wanted their own space and a place where they could have their offices and store their machines and be their own. And then I tried to get them to go to Oak Ridge, but I think they were required to be at the county seat, and they couldn't move to Oak Ridge. But yeah, it's going to require sporadic type meetings where you have field trips.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Next, we have the diagram proposal for the witness conference room, and I'm sure that that will fall under this subcommittee as well, probably. Is anybody here that wants to speak on that? Everybody's got this.
I just think, we haven't made a motion or anything at this point, but I think it's clear we need to move ahead. This is something that's really needed. It's not something that we can wait on a long time, so I think this needs to be resolved shortly. I did notice in an email that actually it was part of one of these things that got sent out to us, that the little drawing we had showing where these rooms would be didn't actually depict a doorway between the hall for those conference rooms and the records room. And clearly there would have to be a door that precludes people walking into the records area 24 hours a day. And so that would have to be there. But those are the kind of things that will end up being in a final drawing. And I think anybody that looks at it will know that that's the intent. But we need to do this. We've needed this for a long time. We're just lucky we haven't had some real problems because of mixing in the hallway the people on both sides of many court actions.
Do you want to form a motion of support for something like this so we can send a message back to the judges that we are in support of this?
Well, I think we should send a recommendation to the full commission that we need to move ahead and approve a actual plan being done. This is just a sort of the idea. We need an actual, engineering plan that we can use to contract it out, and then we will find out what it costs.
Okay.
But I think, again, this committee needs to be able to look at that because where are those records going to go?
And that's all part of that shuffle.
Right.
That's part of the shuffle that I was talking about, is
We're
that
gonna be
we may be able
displacing quite
to
a few
fix this
records up
problem,
there.
but we're creating one over here. And by looking at everything as a whole, we may end up giving the judge more space than what he's asking for because we're able to move other moving parts.
There are more than one ways to skin a cat. We need those 4 conference rooms on the 3rd floor.
Okay. Duly noted.
We'll get to you in a minute there, Commissioner Scott. Anything else?
Well, my motion would be to send it to full commission, but if we want to send it to this committee, I just think that's going to cause more delay. But they're going to have to be involved in the final process. Right now, I think we need to have an actual building plan that we can put out to bid fairly soon. So I don't think we need to wait for next month and next month and next month before we get to the point where we're going to decide what it's going to cost to do it.
We could do that. We could ask purchasing to go ahead and look at that diagram. And
No, commission would have to direct purchasing to actually make a plan, I think.
No, this committee can recommend it to purchasing. And then you have a purchasing committee that'll be looking at it, when and if it comes back. Commission would just need to finalize it and say yay or nay, but, it's all right for purchasing. Go ahead and look at it, the drawing, and get some kind of an estimate on it.
Well, here's the thing that's come to my mind. This committee may figure out another place this can be, and it would be just fine, and we don't want to do a building plan for this one necessarily until we decide that's where we're going to put it, for sure. So it still needs that final determination we're going to put it there, and it seems like that has to be coordinated because there are some other things that have to happen. I understand with the new record storing equipment that they can put in there, there's not many records that are going to have to go anywhere else, except a few that are very, very seldom accessed. And I think we've already figured out that there's room at Arthur Daniel Building that meets the right requirements for fire protection and security to store records.
So your motion remains the same?
I guess my motion would be that it be recommended, well,
Mr. Chairman,
I guess I withdraw my motion. Let somebody else decide what they want to do.
would it be possible that we could just go ahead and get with our buildings and ground, Roger Lloyd, and let him get the mayor and let Roger kind of look at it and come back to us and look at the drawings we've already been presented to some degree and come back to this committee or to the full commission and say this is what it would take to get it done? I think Roger can do that.
What do you think, Mayor?
If that's, well, I can do that. I'm sorry. I can do that.
But to your point as well about the committee, if we do displace records, I do think that committee needs to be part of that so that we're not just going off, coming up with a plan, but I think they should be part of it as well. But yes, I can have Roger can institute the RFP process. We can go with their diagram. We could see what it takes. We could go ahead and be doing all of those activities to get you that information and then incorporate those findings to the committee.
And I guess we've been sitting here for a year on these witness. I don't know, maybe it's been less than a year, but I think obviously the judges have every reason to be upset that we're not taking any action. And to form another committee, which, I've set up here before, we had some committees like this before. And then what happens is, as we all know, everybody comes in and let's do this, let's do that. And then another year goes by and then we might do something. And I guess where I'm at, Mr. Chairman, I'm sitting here and I hear two departments approach us and say, hey, we'd like to switch out. We've had a commissioner go into those facilities apparently, and sounds like we could probably make that happen pretty quickly without having to reinvent the wheel. That's just my interpretation. I'm not saying it's correct, but I think that's another issue. We got Mr. Young out here. We need to let him talk. That's why I called for you, Brian. I didn't want you to feel like we're just moving on. We got a committee, and I'm sure Chairman Isabel was going to come back to you, but I was afraid you was leaving, and I didn't want you to leave after you've been spending time waiting to talk. So that's just my 2 cents, and it doesn't mean it's right, but all the other issues can be resolved in that committee. I like the idea of the committee. I just think it could make sense to go ahead and start addressing some of the issues. A magic wand, it obviously is, we could ask the mayor to go out and get with a developer and go over to 205 Main and see what it would take to develop a building that meets all needs. And everybody, oh, well, we don't want to spend money. Well, that's maybe something the committee can do. I keep seeing developers come in here, Mr. Chairman, and, IDB this and payment in lieu of tax this, and we made a $650,000 investment in 2 acres. We can either let it sit there and collect dust, or we can do something with it. To me, the mayor can spearhead that effort. Do I think it should just be a senior center? No. Do I think it should be another courthouse? No. But that's not for me to decide. It would be for a developer to come in, and who knows, maybe they'll finance it somehow in some way and take payments over time. I don't know. But so I just feel bad for Mr. Alley, Mr. Young, and the judges who have asked for us to take action. And, I even believe Mr. Alley stood before us before and said, in all due respect, I hope you don't form a committee. And I might be speaking for him, but we did that before. We've done that before. And that's my concerns. I like to, look, if Commissioner McCamey has a proposal to move both entities, and I'm not opposed to going and saying, well, there's no space we're taking up storage space for the election office. We're not kicking them out of their offices. We're just taking a place where they're storing voting machines. I got to imagine we can get some secured space somewhere that we could lease to accommodate that. But that's just my thoughts, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you, Mayor.
We have a motion. Oh, Catherine.
I just wanted to interject here that I have met with Rex Lynch. I've gone through the area where they're talking about making these 4 separate offices, and taking that into consideration, plus his plans for future storage of files, not only here on the 3rd floor, but in the Daniel Arthur Building and Juvenile Court, et cetera. My understanding is that there most likely will not be a need for records to be removed from the 3rd floor, except for maybe some extremely old ones. And but with that said, I still think this needs to be taken into consideration as an overall, but with what is being posed and what is needed by Judge Layton and Judge Elledge, I think this is certainly something that could be moved forward without too much problem.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
What's the motion?
Commissioner Need? So what was your motion?
Yeah, I withdrew my motion.
Okay. All right, well, that end this discussion, Brian. And what I wanted to do is, circumvent, is just trying to pull it all together, because I knew if we were going to do a committee, well, then this witness conference room would be definitely part of that. So now we're back to you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate y'all.
Mayor, you said that you could get Roger to go ahead and get to working on this and drawing an RFP with that diagram, and you will go ahead and do that without any further advice. Okay.
Yes, the space we looked at, Robert and I, we went down. Mark and I had talked about that space about 3 months ago. I think it was David that actually thought of the idea. Then I went and spoke to Mark. We had a good discussion about it. He was up on the idea of doing a swap there. Then in the meantime, since all that, that's been a couple of months ago, as time's marched on, where I'm at in the stream of things, I'm working on a bunch of stuff for, I guess, all the departments, like I was explaining, but we've hired a IT coordinator, working in process of hiring them. HR is is onboarding them as we speak, trying to get the right person for me. They're going to give me some candidates here real soon to pick from that they've vetted, and I will be bringing a fourth person into that space. The only issue I have in this is that I have currently 3 human beings in the space that is not very big as it is. We've had OSHA come in there and come down on us for the space limitations as it stands. If I put a fourth person in there, I personally don't know how I'm going to fit a fourth person in that room. And then where I would set their computer system and the network to do that with, unless I have a hallway, or if somebody could donate another office space. This person is really needed. We've already been approved for that. And I look forward greatly to having that teamwork to be able to get done a lot of the projects that I'm working. So I don't know, I have a time-sensitive issue where I do have staff coming on board, and I just don't have room to put them. That's the only thing. And then I'm up for whatever, this all makes sense to me as far as I know. I think when I spoke to you all last month at the commission, I've opened up a Pandora's box by the request, and I apologize for that, but this is due to true need. I'm not looking for, a big, enormous office. I just need space to operate out of. Right now, we're walking in between aisles that we can't pass each other in, and spaces are packed in that office. I don't know of any other office in the county that has that many people in that space. So that was really all I had to throw in there as far as just the time element.
Commissioner Creasy?
Yeah, I just happened to think, and I was going to ask Robert, because I know he remembers, there used to be a sheriff's dispatch behind the courtroom. And is that space being occupied? It was a restricted space.
They still have a lot of equipment in there for 911, but their office is in the Jolly building. But all the equipment is actually in the, and you've seen that space, haven't you, Brian?
They're storing a lot of larger equipment too. It looks quite heavy. That you're talking up on Third here across.
Yeah.
Yeah, right
in behind criminal court.
Yeah.
Behind criminal court, there's a long rectangular space.
Yeah, they've got you'd have to look at it right now. Now, I don't know if that's what, last time I was up there was about a month ago, but there was quite a bit of stuff stacked up.
Is it just a storage area?
I believe so at this point.
I think it's being utilized some in the courthouse here through 911, but I'll double check that.
Yeah, I'm not sure of who is exactly using it.
Just for storage, I know you could get a couple of people in there, I'm sure.
If it's just storage, that might be a good place for our witness rooms.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'll take a look at that, but I was under the impression that it was part of 911 still in operation here in the courthouse.
It just dawned on me there, and I apologize for jumping in, but that space jumped out to me.
Commissioner Scott.
I know you guys miss me on operations, but I'd like to make a suggestion. And like I said earlier, we're not going to make everyone happy. However, this situation is OSHA branded. Therefore, I would like to make a suggestion that perhaps you reach out to the Election Commission and say the room that you've got the Christmas decorations and or voting machines, you need to move it because we need the space. The last thing the county needs to receive is a fine or, subpoenas or anything else because OSHA said you're not doing what we told you to do. We're not going to make everyone happy. But if there's space that can be utilized for another purpose, at least for a temporary, stay, I would suggest we do it.
We're not opposed to going to another building. I think the equipment being here is like I was telling.
Makes sense.
It makes sense. The leeway time, me driving back and forth, or David or us going back and forth, would be the add-on and lost time. But other than that, I was talking to Shane before this meeting, and a lot of what we do, in all reality, can be done from a room somewhere that just as long as I've got a keyboard and a wire. But as far as the department's concerned, that's where I need to, I need to keep my thumb on what's going on and be a part of that group and not just be separated. So I'm concerned if they separated us, then I wouldn't be able to see what my staff's up to, and we have to stay coordinated. It's very critical for my operation. And along with OSHA, that's the other concern. I don't know. They want me to declutter. Unless somebody has space for me to declutter, or I start putting it in the ceiling or in the halls. I'm literally out of space. I just don't have any space. Thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Commissioner Edinburgh.
Brian, how many square feet do you think you need?
As far as now, I'm not a big floor plan guy, but as far as the space that we were looking at with downstairs on the first floor that Mark Stevens was offering, that gives me 4 doors. 3 of those doors, each could be one person, or I could double up the new coordinator with me in the back office if we were to do that. So I think that what I was asking would work out the best. If I were to move into, Casa's not available. We looked at that space.
Downstairs on the first floor.
Room 120.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, 120. And what's housed in 120 right now?
From what I can see, he's got, I guess, what is that, Robert, machines and different boxes and storage for his equipment.
It's Christmas trees. And so, like I said, I would suggest.
She's got the floor.
It's you.
This particular situation, as much as I would like to say it needs to be just wait until the committee gets together and puts things out, with the OSHA issue, the fact that there's so much equipment that would have to be moved if it was a temporary situation, that just does not make any sense. But if we're talking about the space that I'm looking at here, first floor, there is one large room, which would be the northwest corner of the courthouse building. And then there's like a passage or hallway into 3 separate offices. Is that correct?
The 3 separate offices are the area I was speaking of. I don't believe Mark is thinking about letting that other larger room go.
No, we're not talking about that.
We're just trying to figure out where it is on the map.
So
that's
you're
where the
talking about
voting
just the
machines
3 offices, and that,
Yes, ma'am.
is that going to be sufficient for you for how long?
I don't have any intentions of adding, as I said last month in the commission.
Okay.
I think it's time to, with this, coalesce and watch before I do any other additions. I'm not considering anyone for at least another year.
But what about equipment? Is that enough room for all of the equipment?
Oh, yes,
that you
ma'am.
have in use?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Brian. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to speak?
Oh, we're kind of in unison at this point. We're looking at the map together.
All right. Any comments from the board? You know, it kind of looks like that we're going in the right direction by going ahead, and I know that we formed a subcommittee, but I think probably the subcommittee would probably approve going ahead with this recommendation today. Is that, am I correct in that
I think
assumption?
you're correct, but we have one office who's not here to give their side of it, and even if it's storage, from what I remember, there are strict standards that voting machines have to fall under. They can't just go to a, is that right? They have to be.
I know Mark's very, those machines have to be protected.
Yeah.
And I didn't set this forward with Mark to have him lose something, because he's been very cordial, so is Johnny. Everybody's been up and up. So I really...
That's where I like the plan, but there are, these voting machines might be a bigger deal than what we know. And I hate pushing it off one more minute, but.
I was told, Brian and I, by one of the chief deputy,
Miss King,
election commission, that probably these machines are not even ever going to be used again.
They may be thrown
That
away.
they were going to get new machines within the next 2 years before the next election. And they don't know what size they're going to be or anything, what the new ones would be, but they said that more than likely these machines would never be utilized for an election again. All that I've ever been told is that they need to be climate controlled.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, we have climate controlled storage down here where the old Department of Human Services building was, the Arrowwood building. But, as far as security, they would be locked up wherever, and as long as it was climate controlled. But like I said, we were told that they would probably never be used again. They probably wouldn't even make it to another election.
Mr. Jameson, you're our election commission expert on this. What do you have to say about this?
I wouldn't make a change in just right like this. I think we need to ponder this just a little bit. Maybe not 6 months, but,
Commissioner Anderson?
I think Commissioner McKinney kind of went where I was going, that I was under the impression these machines aren't going to be used again, that
They're on their way out, and so we've got a little time as far as finding the election commission some storage space for the new machines.
Well, we could do a couple of things. We could defer this, for 30 days, or we could send it to full commission without a recommendation for discussion and have Mark come to full commission and speak on this, but it would be, I'm just throwing out suggestions.
Is there a motion on the floor?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so either.
No.
And I just want to be clear, Mr. Chairman, I'm not advocating that we make a decision tonight to move tomorrow morning. And obviously, there's a lot of moving parts, and, we'd have to move the machines, and they would have to go to the proper place. We just couldn't, all those things would be done just like Mr. Young. He wouldn't be able to move all of his electronics in a matter of minutes. So it would take time to make a move anyway. I'm just, I just thought it seemed as if there was an agreed, with the gentleman standing here, and, I didn't even know he had talked to the elections administrator. And if he's in agreement, I don't see why it would be so hard for us to just go, okay, what you three gentlemen have agreed upon, I'm good with it. Let's move forward and let us know how that comes to be. Is
that a motion?
Yeah, that's a motion. I'll make that motion.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, sir, yeah. The three have not agreed.
Okay, well.
Johnny would like to have Brian's space. Brian would like to have the election commission space. And the election commission said if they could have the space that Johnny wants, Brian and him could switch. But the three are not in agreement. That's why I feel like that the committee needs to look at it.
I'll withdraw my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I would think that,
I'll make a motion that it moves forward to the committee and the committee report back to this body as quickly as possible. That's my motion.
We have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second it, and I think this committee can meet one time and work it out.
And I don't think the committee, Mr. Chairman, has to have a public hearing meeting if they're not making any decisions in terms of, hey, this is the plan, and we've all agreed together. I mean, they can talk openly. As far as having a 10-day, notification to go look at our own space because 3 or 4 commissioners are meeting in a group, I think that, to me, that doesn't pass the smell test. If somebody wants to sue us, I guess they can. I mean, we're just trying to do business. That's just my comments.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, but Jay, what do you think?
It's not 10-day notice. 10-day notice is rarely required. It's reasonable notice. We can do reasonable notice on a meeting like this in 72 hours or something.
I think it's pretty reasonable when it's Saturday.
It's reasonable notice, and we need to do it. You're deliberating on an issue that's coming before commission for a final vote. So it's not that big of a deal. Get a meeting date, and Annette and I will perfect this notice and have it ready. It doesn't need to always be in a newspaper or general circulation in the county. We can do it other ways.
Hold up. That your feedback is disturbing. If you would, please. Go ahead,
We
Jay.
can do it other ways. We'll put it on our website. We'll put it on Channel 95. We'll send it to Wish. We'll send it to all the news outlets that we possibly can. But we can accomplish this. Just pick a day in the very near future that you want to have that notice, and Annette and I will work together and we'll get the public notice done. But it's nowhere near 10 days. It's just reasonable notice on this issue.
Could we meet Friday?
Yeah, we can.
And then have a recommendation for county commission on Monday night?
Absolutely, you can. We can knock that out real quick.
I'll add the Friday date to my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
What's your Friday time, and we'll get this done?
Hold on a second. We got a motion. We got to get a second. Then I'll come to you. We got a motion. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Okay. That's with the Friday meeting. Okay. Now discussion on that motion.
I have a question before you vote. What are we going to do on Friday?
They're making a recommendation to come before county commission.
So we're going to gather data in the next 72 hours, and we're going to be able to make a recommendation as to who goes where in how many different places.
No, they're
Not
just
the
talking
entire
about.
aspect. I think they're just looking at that one component that involves 3 offices, election commission, IT, and Johnny and the assessor of property. That's the one issue, right, that's paramount at this point. The rest of the stuff, the committee can meet at a different meeting and take up, or they can take it up then. But the one issue we want to see brought back, from what I understand from listening to the discussion, is this 3-way swap here. You want to try to make a determination on that post haste, and we can do that at Monday's meeting.
That's what will be on the agenda for Friday.
All right.
And Mr. Chairman, the committee may decide that they need 30 more days.
They may.
The committee can decide that Friday when they have that meeting. No one's saying they have to approve it all. That's for the committee to decide and come back to us.
Get started.
Yes.
Yep. Any other discussion, Commissioner Scott?
Thank you very much. Being that all committee members are here right now, Mayor, I'd like to ask that we meet perhaps on Thursday morning. And I say Thursday morning because we're already going to be here for budget Thursday afternoon. In other words.
I think my original motion, Mr. Chairman, was to meet as soon as possible.
Yes.
I'd like to stay with that original motion and move forward and let the committee decide when they want to meet, how they want to meet, where they want to meet, and I'm all good with that. Let's move forward with our business here. I'd like to get down the road. if we
Commissioner
could.
Wandel.
Mr. Chairman, that's my motion. We got a second, and I'm ready to take a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The meeting will be soon as possible.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay. Mayor Frank.
I have, Skeeter Clinton is here, and I'm requesting commission approval for a youth and veteran wild turkey hunt this spring, a limited hunt at the Blockhouse Valley Landfill, sponsored by the Milton Hill Longbeards chapter of the National Wild Turkey Federation, with the same conditions that were set by the Anderson County Conservation Board as the hunt approved last year on February 20th, 2018. That was a very successful hunt. Skeeter's here to answer any questions and talk to you about how that turned out. I know I went out that day on site. I know Mr. Yeager went out on site. And I'll let Skeeter tell you a little bit about what he's wanting to do a second time.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve this hunt as it was done very successfully last year. And I make a motion to approve as presented.
Second. Motion second. Any discussion on the motion?
Is there a date set?
March 23rd for the youth hunt, April the 27th for veterans hunt.
23rd and 27th.
I move we make that part of the motion, those are the dates. Those are firm.
Yes. Youth season is March 23rd, and of course, that's with youth hunt, and then statewide runs through May 7th, so the April the 27th will be the veterans hunt.
Sounds good.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Skeeter.
Thank you, Skeeter. The next item, and I know we've had a lot of discussion tonight about other things. I had a citizen come to me and ask about our posting for weapons in the courthouse. And I reached out to Sheriff Barker and the judges and asked about if maybe we could do a plastic sleeve or something that just cited TCA. I put that email in there that I had sent to those folks. I can't put my fingers on it right at the second. Judge Elledge did bring me back all the pages of the statute that deal with weapons. I'm happy to do what, I just want to respond to the citizens, so I'm happy to do whatever if we think this isn't manageable. If I know I talked to Commissioner Meade before the meeting about how to define that. Maybe Commissioner Meade could work with the law director, since that's Commissioner Meade's area of expertise, and maybe come up with a way to define weapon. And, you know, our sign could just say see attached if you want further information or something like that. I was just trying to do something that maybe might expedite a solution.
Commissioner Meade.
Well, one has to wonder how anyone could be confused with this, okay? Yeah, and the fact is it's really confusing. The law is very complex. First of all, the prohibition only applies when judicial proceedings are actually in progress by state law, and then under a county commission resolution be extended for 30 minutes after they hit the gavel, so there's time for the court to clear, those kind of things to happen. And the other thing is that under state law, something can be almost anything can be a deadly weapon if you're using it that way. And it's been defined that way in the courts. It's been defined by the Attorney General. But basically, the way it works, or the way it actually has been working here in the courthouse, okay, is that if you're going through security, okay, it's kind of like you're at the airport, except you can't have in some cases you can have a drink, in some cases you can have food, but the judges have the authority to prohibit that in their courtrooms too, and so that gets enforced at the security checkpoint. But throughout the entire building during the day, okay, firearms of any kind, unless you're one of the exceptions, okay, law enforcement, county commissioners, judges, all firearms are prohibited in the courthouse unless you're one of the exceptions. But if you're going into a courtroom, the state law gives judges substantial authority to control those courtrooms. I mean, it's just, there's so much case law and stuff that's done on this. But basically, if the judge says, I don't allow striped shirts in my courtroom, then by God, that's going to be the rule. I mean, it's really, they give them wide authority for almost anything. And so right now, if people go up to the third floor, they're going to be stopped if they have any kind of an edged device. I mean, if it's fingernail clippers with one blade that's sharpened, I believe that they're not letting that through, just like they won't at the airport. Any kind of an edged weapon can be pretty lethal if someone decides to use it for that. So that kind of meets the definition of something that could be used as a deadly weapon. In the rest of the courthouse, if you're not going through the security checkpoint, there's great question under the law as written. If you just had a pocket knife or something in your pocket, that would be okay as long as you didn't have to go through security or be in an area where proceedings are in progress. And that's basically the way that we enforce it. So it is kind of complex. It is complex. But for someone to hand someone the TCA code and tell them this is the rule is very, very difficult. I think we need to have a phone number they can call and ask what the rules are by somebody that's been briefed well. Or we need to provide. We can provide a briefing, because if you just take the laws and just read them, they mean almost nothing if you don't know what the court rulings and attorney general opinions say. It would take a book a half-inch thick to actually give everything they needed to be able to have a fairly good chance at figuring it out. And I know if somebody had handed me something like that with all the rules, if I hadn't already talked to people at the courts and talked to the judges and talked to the police and talked to the legislators and studied the law for 10 or 12 years, I wouldn't be able to tell you how it works either. So having it, I don't see a simple way to do this, but here's the one thing I think we do have to do. We have to make sure that there is a reliable method by which people can find out whether proceedings are in progress or not. Right now, routinely, the signs designed to specifically do that are not being used the way they were designed in accordance with the county commission's rule. I come here all times of the night, weekends, everything. Those signs on the doors still say proceedings are in progress, and I guarantee you they're not. Okay, so right there, we're violating our own law and confusing the public, because it looks like almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the weapons are prohibited from the courthouse, even for those people that carry them legally in public. The other thing is the signs at the checkpoint, which we specifically designed and allowed them to put up, are supposed to be taken down 30 minutes after proceedings have ended for the day, with a stipulation in our resolution that if for any reason the judge decide to recommence judicial proceedings for any reason, that can be meetings in his office. If he decides to do that, then he can direct the security guys to reestablish security, and then after that was over, it would again have 30 minutes until the signs are supposed to come down. But that's not being done. I've argued with the security guys about it night after night after night and told it's none of their business. And I keep trying to tell them it is. But eventually, right now, the way state laws are written, we're going to get sued. Okay, because the laws are written to make it very, very easy for people to sue the county over violation of their gun rights.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we take the mayor's recommendation to have Mr. Mead, Commissioner Mead, and law director work together to come up with what we need to post and go ahead and report back to this committee.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Any discussion on the motion?
That's fine.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
I just have one question here. This hotline that Commissioner Meade was talking about, can we just use his cell phone?
I'm sure you could.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Well, I'm sure the bailiffs have been instructed what is a weapon that can't come through, so that might be a way to simplify that.
But that's not the same as what the state law says.
Yeah.
And those laws only apply when proceedings are in progress.
Right. Yep.
And so that's what makes it hard. If you don't know if proceedings are in progress or not, then you have no idea what the current status of the law is.
Yep.
And that's a big problem.
My next request is, I had a citizen who is involved in media and the arts come to me about the establishment of an arts commission. And this isn't intended to replace a tourism committee or anything like that, but more along the lines of supplement and perhaps work hand in hand with them. I'm just requesting authorization to perhaps work on the development of an arts commission. I've done some research. I've also talked with a citizen and went over a proposal from Atlanta I think a good way to get one off the ground, it would be most beneficial if it were a 501c3 or some type of outside organization, but perhaps to get it off the ground, we might start with a government-appointed committee. Maybe the commission accepts applications or something along those lines. And we kind of help get this off the ground, do some of the organizing, maybe a little bit of an inventory of festivals or places, you know, for instance, Ciderville or festivals and things like that. So I just kind of wanted your input, and if you'd be willing to authorize me to perhaps come up with a plan to get that off the ground if you think that's a worthy idea.
Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion, have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Just, if you could just state the motion so I will know what exactly we're doing.
It's to approve a request by the mayor to initiate work on the creation of an arts commission.
I like it. Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and then the last item, this is informational. The U.S. Census is providing local governments with the opportunity to review and propose revisions to their boundary changes that the census will make to our census tracts and the census block groups in connection with the 2020 census. So I wanted to make you all aware, as well as the folks at home. This is the map they sent. I'm not going to unfold it all here tonight. I will post it outside of my office. I will work with the property assessor to perhaps post it outside of theirs, and then also in the planning department, and if anyone wants to make a comment or changes. They do this in order to better facilitate delivery of services. For instance, they'll group like a community together if there were going to be a grant application or something like that. But I do want to give the public and you all an opportunity to see what they have proposed so that we could get any comments in if we want.
Mr. Chairman. Mayor, appreciate you bringing that to our attention, and I would like, Mr. Chairman, to have a copy of that in the commission room as well. Now, to be clear, this is where we're going to reappropriate, or what's the term I'm looking for? Redistrict?
No, this is, okay, I don't know, for instance, if, I don't know if you've heard like the legislation on opportunity zones,
yes,
for instance. The government has us assigned to different census tracts for their purposes. So, for instance, if you go on, this has nothing to do with
nothing to do with voting and precincts?
No, sir.
Okay.
No,
All
no.
right.
So it's more about, you know, federal districts for funding of services, or the opportunity zones. For instance, there are areas that are maybe low income or blighted, and the federal government passed legislation that if you start a new business in that particular census tract, you're eligible for tax benefits. So they're trying to use that census tract in order to attract a business startup. So I had a lady, for instance, who came to me. She's in the biomedical field. She is choosing to start her business in a census tract down in the Oliver Springs area, because that is an opportunity zone, and she's going to save a lot of money if all pans out on her patent and her discovery. That's one of the purposes of the census tract. So it doesn't have anything to do with us and voting or anything like that.
No redistricting?
No,
Not yet?
no.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mountain View Park.
Oh. Was that for me?
Yeah, if you have any comments, I know you.
Okay. What I did with regard to Mountain View Park is I had discussed with Chairman Wandel and Commissioner Fritz. Anderson County entered into a lease agreement with Carter Express, and they did grading and reworking of county-owned property there in order to temporarily use that site while their business expanded. In addition, in order to reach the fair market value, in addition to all that work, I think that was $14,000 if I'm not mistaken, Don't quote me on that, but I think that was the amount. We did another $250 a month. Mountain View Park is county-owned property that is leased by an organization that manages that, and I don't have that in front of me, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten. I think that's a 20-year lease. And they have some needs. You know, they do annual fundraisers. I know many of you have gone. Commissioner Wandell, always see you there. But they would like to replace some electric and do some of those things. I took, you know, with Commissioner Wandell and Commissioner Fritz's support, I took this idea to Budget Committee and kind of as a place marker asked if we could allocate those $250 a month funds to Mountain View Park in order to address some of their needs. We did not do an actual budget amendment because Natalie, in talking with her and the finance team, it was going to be very difficult because we did not know how many months they were going to be there. So we just kind of got the endorsement of Budget Committee, if you will, and if this committee wants to endorse that idea, that would be an appropriate motion.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the update, Mayor. I thought when we did the Carter Express that we allocated those funds to the Conservation Board when we did it.
No, they're just going into a restricted account, and then what Natalie is recommending is once that lease is terminated, then we do the actual budget amendment where we would put that wherever you want. And what I suggested to Budget Committee was into the Conservation Fund account.
Yeah, I'd be more comfortable with it going through the Conservation Board. Is that right, Jay? Yeah.
Yes, we can handle it that way. I want you to understand, though, that the Conservation Board, we need to make a decision if we're going to relet that property or we're going to maintain it by the Conservation Board. It's not one of the parks that we do maintenance on that our crew does. We did a 20-year lease. I want to say I did it in 2002, so it's pretty old, but I think it's fixing to expire here in a couple of years. I'll pull that, Mayor, tomorrow and make sure I can find a copy of it. So we do have it under lease, but I think that's great that we sent it back through the Conservation Board because that would be the arm of our county government that would take over maintenance.
Okay. Yeah, I think, Mayor, Mr. Chairman, maybe it makes sense just to, I don't know how much total funds we got coming in. I mean,
It'll be anywhere between $1,500 and $3,000.
And I think their project, they estimate, is going to be in the neighborhood of $3,000 if I remember. And they're going to replace all the electrical, which is not obviously probably to code. And they do all the landscaping, the mowing, the trash, all that kind of good stuff. I'll make a motion that the mayor work with finance and the Conservation Board to allocate these funds as necessary to the Mountain View Park 5013C, I believe it is.
Have motion, second. Discussion on the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next.
Is Glen Alpine for me as well?
Sure. It's probably Commissioner Waddell, not you.
Well,
no, it was actually Wandell.
Yeah, Commissioner Waddell and myself talked about it, but I said if he didn't put it on the agenda, I would. And but do you have any updates on that?
Yes, sir. Where we are at, we went through Budget Committee and received approval. We're pulling funds out of restricted codes, also accepting or requesting some from the unassigned fund balance. With the Budget Committee, and I can distribute this to members of commission, I put in the supporting documents that showed, for instance, once we do relocate the site, the city of Clinton will issue funds in the amount of $105,657. Then part of the agreement that was executed in January, or effective January of 2012, was that we would have a public sale of the existing site. And what I requested from Budget Committee, and they did pass, were 3 accompanying motions that essentially secure those funds so that the unassigned fund balance is the recipient, and when those funds come in, Finance Committee knows to put that back into the fund balance. So we did receive several bids. The reason we have made this budget agenda request is so that we can award the low bidder. We did other updates. We met with citizens who have appeared before this body before with concerns about what will happen at the site. Will there be refrigerators there? Will it be a location that collects that kind of material? We are not, but I've told them we will go to solid waste and the board and get that commitment for them to make them feel better. They have also organized, and Commissioner Anderson was at a meeting where this idea came to fruition. They have organized the Commissioner, help me if I can't remember the name, the Norris Scenic
Highway Beautification
Team.
Yeah,
Yes.
something like that.
So they are going to work. Jeff has already set up a meeting. I think that's on the 22nd. The citizens are going to meet with Jeff Trabaka to go over the detailed plans, and then they're going to work on landscaping and beautification proposal. We have seen other areas, for instance, Alcoa Highway, the citizens put together a beautification plan. There is no reason to believe that we can't create a very aesthetically pleasing site that, could be copied around the state and even in our own county. So I think with the citizen input, we're going to have a really good plan put forward. So that's where we are right now, and if that budget amendment passes full commission, then we will award the low bidder. It did come in considerably less than the estimates at Solid Waste Committee, and once we award, then we'll enter into the contractual process.
Do we have an idea when we, go ahead, Commissioner McKinney, I'm sorry.
The low bid was $570,000, and there's a $79,000 upgrade to the road for the turn lanes and all that. TDOT did tell us that with all the floods and everything that's going on, that they couldn't help us any with that. We had thought that they could help with some of the road construction, but they said at this point they couldn't commit anything to that. There's still a possibility that they can help us with some of it. But if the Budget Committee recommendation to the full commission passes next Monday, we can award the bid on Tuesday and get started as soon as weather,
great,
this torrential rains quit, we can get started on it up there.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Well, I hate to jinx it, so every time I talk about it, I think something bad's going to happen, but things are going well with it, and I think the citizen involvement is going to be key to a successful building of this site. And I don't know how many of you, I know Commissioner Waddell sent me a text message with a picture of the current Glen Alpine site that was flooded during this rainstorm. So, I hope to address that by moving the site and then putting the other site to good use and retail use for the county and the city of Clinton. So.
Commissioner Anderson.
I just wanted to say I appreciate the mayor inviting me and Commissioner Waddell last week to the meeting, and I know those residents across the road from that area weren't thrilled about it going to that site at first, but they're supportive. They like the plans that were presented, and they like having the input of the beautification and then the safety changes to the road and everything. So I think their goal is to, if you're driving 40 miles an hour past it, you don't know that there's a convenience center back there. So
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Budget planning discussion. Budget Chairman White, would you like to?
He says to talk low and talk slow and don't talk too much. So we are facing the Budget Committee, and we've got a good committee. We've got some good folks on this committee, and I think they're dedicated. You've took two of them tonight to get their talent to another cause, but our Budget Committee is going to have I think, a hard time pulling all this together. And what our goal is to present to County Commission a budget with no tax increase, but a budget that don't have any surprises for any other commissioners that's not on the Budget Committee. So what I'm asking tonight is if you've got either one of you, and I know we've got a lot of experience up here. We've all went through budget process. We've got a couple new ones that maybe hasn't gone through a lot of budget processes, but if you've got any comments, if you've got any ideas, if you've got any constructive criticism for us, we would love to hear that, and to where that we could incorporate your ideas into our process that we're trying to come up with. Natalie says that we've got Ms. Erb says we've got a lot of work to do, some hard work to do, some hard decisions to make. So we're asking for your input. We're asking for, we're meeting Thursday at 1 o'clock. I think we normally meet at 4. But we're going to invite all of the department heads, come in for 15 or 20 minutes apiece, just sort of like we always do. And we'll know 4 or 5 or 6 o'clock Thursday night where what kind of plan we got. And we've sort of been talking a little bit about maybe inviting the Budget Committee and the Operations Committee to our workshop. But we won't know if that's going to be needed until after we meet Thursday. So I guess I wanted to, I think as a Budget Committee, what we'd like to do, and we've discussed this commission, this body right here, we're going to be commissioners for 3 more years. If something bad don't happen, we'll all be here for 3 more years. If we could put in place a procedure that would work and accommodate all of the county's needs without a tax increase, if we could put some kind of a procedure in place to where that next year and the following year and the following year, all that Ms. Erb would have to do would just plug in the correct numbers. If we can work together, and I know we've got the expertise, if we can tweak it to where that we can make this happen. So if you've got any ideas, if you've got any ways that we could accomplish that, the Budget Committee would appreciate it. And I'm going to hush.
Commissioner
Thank
White,
you for listening.
Thank you very much. You do a great job on budget. Thank you for coming and asking for input. We really appreciate it.
Well, we need it because this is for the whole county. The Budget Committee is willing to work and put the time in, but it's going to affect every one of us how this comes about. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you can increase services and reduce taxes, it'd be great.
Sir?
I said if you can increase services and reduce taxes, it'd be great.
If you notice, President Trump presented his budget to Congress or whoever he presents it to, and it was he had in it $750 million cuts of unnecessary spending. Can you imagine? $750 million of unnecessary spending. So maybe we can look through our budget and maybe there might be some unnecessary spending, but we're going to look for it and see if that's possible.
Thank you, Jerry.
New business. Jay?
Yes, sir. Thank you. As I explained to you before, we have an affidavit from Mr. Cappiello that needs to be signed by the chairman. the County Commission Chairman, Commissioner Wandell. And what this agreement says is the county holds no legal interest on the parcel where the old General Sessions Division 2 was. That's on the Oak Ridge Turnpike. That's currently now Taco Bell, I believe.
Yes.
That business is being sold to a new owner out of California, and they think that's a cloud of title, the fact that we at one time had a rental agreement there for several years. I'm not going to argue with them about that. We hold no financial interest, no legal interest in that property. We were under a lease term that was expired, and we were on a month-to-month for several months, and we don't have any legal interest in that property. It's already changed hands one time without this issue being brought forward. So I'd like permission, if somebody make the motion for the chairman, to make a recommendation to County Commission that the chairman be able to sign this affidavit. And
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
I have motion second. Commissioner Creasy.
Yes, my question,
Yes, sir.
you're saying the business is going to change hands. Is the property going to change?
I think,
Ownership of the property is going to stay with Capiello?
no, Capiello's already sold it.
He sold it?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware
Yeah,
of that.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Commissioner Wandell.
And we're talking about the property where Taco Bell is?
Yep.
Yes, sir. Our old General Sessions.
I guess my question is, why do we need to sign it when it's already there?
When what?
Why do we need to sign a document when the building's already there? I mean, I'm just...
I know, it's changing hands. There's a company out of California that's buying it from the company that it's currently owned by. And when they do that, there's a title review. Anytime you close on real estate, there's a title review. And this evidently emerged as a potential cloud on the title. According to their title review people, I'm sure it's some attorneys. And it didn't arise when it was purchased before, but we all know this situation. It was back and forth here for, I don't know, since 2005. And our lease was expired. We had never held any financial interest. The building has been destroyed, long been destroyed, and at the time we left and we moved, we were under a month-to-month, and we've been exercising that for several months. And basically a holdover tenant that Tony allowed us. He's very cordial about it.
I guess my next question would be, based on the title that you mentioned and Ms. Denenberg mentioned, I guess, how do we know that all the taxes were paid, property taxes? I know that in that original lease agreement, we were on the hook to pay those taxes. So I guess maybe the question could be the property taxes and what's due and who's responsible at what point. And so for me to sign this document, I would need reassurance from you in writing that all taxes are paid and we are not liable for any.
We're certainly not liable, but I'll be glad to do that for you. Anytime you have a real estate closing, there's a closing sheet in residential properties. It's called a HUD-1, and they prorate property taxes. And we'll be able to see what the two parties are doing as far as their taxes are concerned. But we're not a party to that agreement at all. We're not a buyer or seller or anything at all. It's long been, we never held fee simple in this property. We never held an ownership property, interest in this property at all.
Do we have any kind of documentation that says this is the date we stopped the agreement?
Yes, we do. We have the date of, I think it's in the affidavit that Tony gave us notice.
Okay.
He sent us an email, I think, to the mayor and myself, copied myself, and I sent it all to everybody that was on the commission at that time. And that was the time the time started for us to vacate the building once he sent that email.
I'll obviously respect the wish of this body, but I'd like to review it over the weekend. And,
you're welcome to.
Then look at it Monday and get with the mayor and see if she has any thoughts on it. See, and if you have that email from Capiello that says it ended on this date or whatever you referred it to.
You have the original here. I think he's got it in the affidavit. Did you? I sent you the attachment. Did you get it? Commissioner Wandell?
I'll probably do it. I'll have to look at it. But I think we can proceed on. I'll be happy to review the document over the weekend, and you let the body know on Monday.
Commissioner Dittenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to try to alleviate Chairman Wandell's misgivings, and having worked for the title underwriters for 20-plus years, basically all they're looking to do is that they've seen that there was a document, that there was a lease, and being the overly cautious people that title attorneys are, they're just making sure that there is nothing that could possibly come back to Cloud Title so they can go ahead and issue the title policies for this transaction. And basically, that's all it is. There's no problem with what they're asking to be done. It's just another way that they can clear any possible question of title. And the simple fact that they're in California, which quite frankly, the laws in the state of California are just, they're strange. Let's just leave it at that. And
I guess and that's all great, but this is like dated January 2019. Here we are in March.
That's when Tony signed it. You'll date it the day you sign it.
Okay, but like I said, does this, I have this copy in my email.
Yes,
Okay,
I'll send it
all
to
right,
you. It's
thanks.
attachment.
Yep.
Annette will have the original. If anybody needs to see it or wants to see a copy, I'll send it to you.
it's no big deal at
Commissioner
all.
Creasy.
Yeah, I'd like for Annette to issue us commissioners a copy for us to review as well.
Please.
Annette, I've got it already scanned. I'll send it to you tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave.
Good.
Commissioner Meade.
I think it's important to clarify that this has no impact on the county's legal position in the form of taxation of the property. It doesn't impact that at all. Isn't that right, Mr. Yeager?
That's correct.
Absolutely no impact. It only has to do with the deed and its record.
We get the same amount of taxes. It's the value set by the assessor of property.
By the assessor.
Will probably be the same for next year as this year. There's no increase or decrease unless it's very nominal.
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe our attorney would be recommending this if this was not a legal document.
I'm sure.
I'm on it just for the educational aspect of it. Well, you can go talk to the attorney after we're through here. Yeah, I'd like it for my file.
Commissioner Wandell.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly don't mean to imply anybody's doing anything wrong. It's just that when I sign my name to something that represents this county, I'm going to make sure that, and it's no disrespect to anybody in this building or in this room, or I'm just going to make sure that it, I remember the agreement we had with Vintage, and I know that we're responsible for taxes, and I want to make sure all the taxes are paid and we're not on the hook when I sign that now we're all of a sudden responsible for a bunch of taxes. Not saying we are, but I'm just going to make sure that we're not. And as I said, I'll review it over the weekend, and I'll be happy to sign it Monday if there's no problems. Sounds like there is no problems. I'll just make sure on my own accord that there is none. That's all. No problem. Thank you.
We have a motion second, send this to full commission. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The last item is we have groundwater contamination. And earlier, in what used to be our revenue committee, which is now our intergovernmental committee, we elected Madam Chairman Dittenberg. And the reason, and in your packet, you've got all this information about groundwater contamination. And one of the important things that we've got to look forward is protecting the residents of Anderson County and Knox County, all of our surrounding counties with things that's going forward. We know that TVA is shutting down, and we have some very valuable information about the Kingston Coal steam plant and the ash spill there. So I think this groundwater contamination is very important going forward, and the wishes of the intergovernmental committee is for Commissioner Dittenberg to start giving reports monthly on that and keeping up with that. Commissioner, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have started in the past week or so in trying to educate myself to what coal ash is and the problems that are coming from coal ash. I have provided to Commission some of the reports that I have come across. I have a lot more that I will provide to you. I think it's going to be very important for the county to work in connection with the city of Oak Ridge and surrounding areas, because we're not the only ones that are going to be affected by what is going on at TVA and has been going on there ever since they fired up that coal plant 50 years ago. A lot of things have changed as far as EPA requirements. One of the things that I found that really disturbs me is the fact that coal ash is not considered a hazardous material. And from what I've been reading, it simply simplifies the requirements as far as where they put it, how they put it, and dispose of it. And I think that's something that's really going to be causing us problems down the line. But I think that we're up for the challenge, and we'll certainly be looking at it very strongly.
Thank you. Any other discussion, questions, Commissioner Wonder?
Just quick, so the information that was in our packet for the operation, is that information you provided, Commissioner?
I believe so.
Thank you. It's good information. I appreciate it. No, that's all I have on that.
Anything else?
Under new business?
Yes.
It could be old business, but I don't know if everybody else, did we get the ethics information from February 26th in your packets, or is it just in mine?
No, it's all county commissioner.
Okay. What I'd like to know, Mr. Chairman, is, and I know it's not on our agenda, but we have discussed this item in the past. Right. I'd like to understand from Mr. Yeager's perspective where we stand with the Ethics Commission, and are we moving forward? I understand that there are different options available to the county as it relates to the Ethics Commission, whether we have an ethics policy or ethics committee. So I'm just trying to see if we can, as a commission, put something in place that we can run by and move forward on. And it's, again, not to attack Mr. Yeager and say he did anything wrong. Mr. Yeager did exactly what he was asked to do some odd years ago in putting the ethics committee together back in the day when that was a big push throughout the state for everyone to have one. So what I'd like to know is, where are we in the county as it relates to the Ethics Commission, and how are we going to proceed forward? And I think that would require some discussion from the law director and hopefully the mayor.
Okay.
Where we're at, we've got a meeting scheduled for next Thursday. That's the meeting where everybody should have their designees and their appointees in place. The meeting agenda that I know of will elect the new officers. That would be a chairman and a vice chair for that. Get everybody sworn in. Remember, there's an oath of office. And then we'll discuss the current state of the law and anything else the commission wants to. This is a new meeting to reform it, get new members setting up here, and new officers. Both the officers have left employment with Anderson County, so we need new officers. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of discussion. Anybody that's available that evening, next Thursday, please come by, and we'll go through it. I think, Chairman, you have we've got county commissioners already on it, and am I wrong?
There's a designee from the county commission.
I think, do you have an appointment on there? It's on there. Do you have the packet with you?
I have the packet.
Okay, look at the composition. I know the mayor.
You mean the two?
No, I'm not talking about.
Yeah, there's certainly.
There's county commissioners on there,
yeah.
but I wanted to see. Sorry, Tracy.
That's all right.
You could, yeah, under B, the chairman of the county commission has a spot already assigned, virtue of the title. But he can certainly appoint a designee if he wanted to, or he can serve himself. And then there's the county commission spots on there. The mayor has an absolute extra appointment. So we'll we'll see who the new members are at
So
that time.
does that need to be done Monday night?
Monday night?
There's a schedule. I didn't see it either. I apologize. Thank you for pointing out, Jay. March 21st, Thursday, room 312 at 4 p.m. Is the scheduled meeting for the Ethics Commission appointments. I guess, so Jay, let me ask you this question.
Yes, sir.
Do we currently have an active Ethics Commission as we sit now?
Yeah, we've got an ethics commission, but several of the members are gone from employment with the county. That's Rodney Archer and Steve Queener. They were the chairman and vice chair. And we've got some seats open and some people that have the ability to appoint new members. And
I guess
we've had this discussion a couple of times before that we wanted to reconstitute it and get new members. In fact, I think the first is, I know you were chairman. I want to say it was last April or May we started to try to get the ball rolling on this.
I guess, and again, you know the law better than me, but in doing the research on the Ethics Commission, we didn't turn on our minutes to the state.
Yeah, we did too. We've got the letter, and
that has to be done every year. So you're telling me that it was done every year? The minutes were turned in every year?
No, well, I'm not familiar with that.
Well, again, I'm not an attorney. I'm just trying to. So the options to us as a county commission in the county is we can have an ethics commission, or we can have an ethics policy. Is that correct?
No, you have one and the same, but there is some thought, some people believe that they don't need an ethics commission. That may be the route you want to take. You still need an ethics policy in place, but if you eliminate the commission itself, that discussion will take place at the meeting.
That's what I was wanting to find out.
There's nothing to be done on Monday night. But if you eliminate the ethics commission, you understand there's not a lot of redress for people that would have a complaint. But anyway, that's my thoughts. We'll discuss it in depth next Thursday night, and if whichever route the Ethics Commission wants to take, we'll certainly honor their pleasure. But you've got to remember, any recommendation they make has to come before the full body of County Commission for approval. It was this body that organized it, passed the ethics policy that included the Ethics Commission. So the Ethics Commission cannot act on their own. They would just be making a recommendation to County Commission just like this committee does. Okay. It would come back to you, whatever decision they wanted to make.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Mr.
Yes, sir. Anything else on that issue? Thank you.
Any old business? Commissioner Creasy?
Well, under notices or announcements.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say you advised us tonight that Reese Wallace had passed away.
That's correct.
Longtime commissioner. He served during a time when this county was building and growing, and he served with Robert, and he served with myself, served with the mayor's father. He was a good man. He's very conservative, and he stood for what he believed, and he was very strong about that, and he voiced those opinions, and as Robert remembers. And I'm sure the mayor has memories of Reese as well from her father. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say that and invite Robert and the mayor if they'd like to say something about him also.
I never did know why they called him Reese, but I found out after reading the obituary his middle name was Maurice, Kenneth Maurice Wallace, and I guess that's where they got the Reese from. But, you know, I've always known him as Reese Wallace and never by Kenneth or Maurice. So, but he was a good man, loved the Lord,
yes.
And he was a dedicated member of his church, and he still sang in the choir just until recently. So.
Anything else? Thank you, Commissioner Creasy. Thank you, Commissioner McCamey. Okay. Motion to adjourn.